A deep blue diamond carries a deadly legend. This is the Hope Diamond, a gem of breathtaking beauty shadowed by stories of ruin and despair. For centuries, whispers have followed its path, linking its owners to madness, financial collapse, and untimely death. We are about to embark on a historical investigation to separate the chilling facts from the compelling fiction. By the end, you will know the definitive truth behind one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. Was a French queen's execution and an American heiress's grief truly caused by a stone? Or have we been telling ourselves a story to explain life's random cruelty? What does it take for a legend to feel more real than history itself? Its deep blue color seems to swallow the light, a mesmerizing sapphire hue unlike any other diamond in the world. This 45.52 carat gem, cut in an antique cushion style, possesses a weight and presence that is both physical and almost supernatural. That famous blue comes from a rare guest within its crystal structure, trace amounts of the element boron, and it holds a secret that only reveals itself in darkness. Under the brief kiss of ultraviolet light, the stone absorbs the energy, and then, for a few moments after the light is gone, it glows with a vivid red phosphorescence like a burning ember held in the hand. Today, the diamond is the centerpiece of a magnificent necklace, a pendant suspended from a chain of 16 white diamonds and framed by 45 more. This dazzling presentation at the Smithsonian Institution makes its dark legend all the more compelling. How can something of such immense and scientific beauty be the carrier of so much misfortune? The very perfection of the gem creates a powerful contradiction, making the stories of its curse feel both impossible and somehow perfectly logical. Its allure is the engine of its legend, a trap as beautiful as it is terrifying. Long before human hands ever touched it, the Hope Diamond was born in darkness. Its story begins not in a jeweler's workshop, but over 1 billion years ago, more than 100 miles beneath the Earth's surface. Here, in the planet's deep mantle, unimaginable pressure and scorching heat forged carbon atoms into a perfect crystal lattice. That rare trace of boron, the element that gives the stone its signature blue hue, was trapped inside during this violent creation. But how does a gem formed at such impossible depths ever see the light of day? The answer lies in a force of raw planetary power. Intense volcanic activity forced the diamond upwards, carried within a special type of molten rock called kimberlite. This rocky pipe acted like an elevator, traveling from the mantle all the way to the surface in a journey that might have taken only a few hours, a breathtakingly fast ascent from the deepest hell to the open air. The volcanic eruption that finally delivered it spent itself and cooled, leaving behind a deposit in what we now know as the Golconda region of India. The name Golconda itself became synonymous with unparalleled quality and size in the world of diamonds. These mines were the sole source for the most legendary gems in history. The magnificent Koh-i-Noor and the stunning Orlov diamond both emerged from this very same earth, making Golconda the absolute pinnacle of diamond provenance. This scientific origin, a journey of 1 billion years culminating in a volcanic blast, is the stone's true documented history. It is a story just as incredible as any curse, grounded in the violent geology of our planet. And it is from this place of established fact, this documented journey from the Earth's heart, that we can now trace its path into human hands, where the documented facts begin to intertwine with whispers of doom. The stone's first documented appearance in the human story is as dramatic as its volcanic birth. It emerges from the mists of history in the possession of a man who seemed to live a life immune to any curse, the 17th century French gem merchant and adventurer Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. A man of boundless ambition and courage, Tavernier made 6 arduous journeys to the east, braving bandits, disease, and treacherous seas to bring the most magnificent gems of India and Persia back to the courts of Europe. It was on one of these voyages, likely around the year 1666, that he acquired a massive, crudely cut blue diamond weighing an astonishing 112 carats. This rough, triangular stone was the direct precursor to the Hope diamond, a raw treasure known to history as the Tavernier blue. But how did a French merchant come to possess such a singular gem from the exclusive Golconda mines? This is where the documented facts of a business transaction begin to blur into the first dark whispers of the curse. A powerful and persistent legend insists that Tavernier did not simply buy the diamond. The story goes that he stole it, prizing the blue stone directly from the eye of a sacred Hindu idol, a statue of the goddess Sita. By committing this sacrilege, he supposedly invoked the immediate and eternal wrath of the gods, placing a deadly hex upon the stone and all who would later own it. The historical record, however, paints a far less sensational end for the adventurer. Jean-Baptiste Tavernier sold the diamond, along with many other treasures, to King Louis XIV of France and was rewarded with a title of nobility. He died at the age of 84, not torn apart by wild dogs as the gruesome legend claims, but from a simple fever. This stark contradiction between fact and folklore is the very foundation of the Hope diamond's mystery. The curse needed an origin story, a foundational sin to justify the suffering that would follow. What better beginning than the theft from a god, a crime so audacious it could only be paid for in generations of misery? The legend, it seems, was already being written, choosing its own facts and ignoring others to craft a more compelling and terrifying tale. The blue diamond now entered a world of absolute power and dazzling spectacle. In 1668, Jean-Baptiste Tavernier presented his magnificent stone to King Louis XIV of France, a monarch known as the Sun King for the radiant brilliance of his reign. The king, a connoisseur of beautiful and rare objects, added the gem to his growing collection of crown jewels, but Louis was not satisfied with its rustic, triangular form. He wanted a gem that reflected the glory of his court, a stone cut with French elegance and precision. He entrusted his court jeweler to recut the 112-carat Tavernier blue, a process that carefully shaped and polished it into a stunning 67-carat gem of perfect symmetry. This new masterpiece was officially named the Blue Diamond of the Crown, though history remembers it as the French blue. It was a jewel without equal, a symbol of the monarch's absolute authority and the seemingly unshakable wealth of the French monarchy. It was set in gold and suspended on a ribbon, worn by the king for grand ceremonial occasions, a blazing point of sapphire light amidst the overwhelming gold and silver of the Versailles court. Yet, as the diamond found its permanent home among the French crown jewels, the first threads of its dark legend began to weave themselves into the fabric of history. The opulent world of the Sun King, for all its grandeur, was built on a foundation of immense debt and social resentment. The French blue, this ultimate symbol of royal power, soon became a focal point for the rising anger of a nation. Could the presence of this cursed stone have somehow accelerated the downfall of a dynasty? Or did we simply look back at a century of royal misfortune and need a tangible object to blame? The diamond was now at the heart of a gathering storm, its beauty about to be eclipsed by revolution. Yet the diamond's new home in the French treasury seemed to cast a long shadow over the very dynasty that owned it. King Louis XIV, the Sun King, outlived almost everyone he held dear. His son, the Grand Dauphin, died of smallpox. His grandson, the Duke of Burgundy, and his great-grandson all died in quick succession from a devastating outbreak of measles. This relentless series of tragedies left the French throne not to a seasoned heir, but to a frail 5-year-old child, his great-grandson, who became King Louis XV. The young king did manage to survive his youth, but his reign was haunted by misfortune. France suffered staggering military defeats, most notably in the 7 Years' War, which stripped the nation of its overseas empire. At home, the treasury was drained by extravagance, and public discontent festered into widespread resentment against the crown. The French blue, locked away in the royal collection, was seldom worn, yet its legacy of loss seemed to be quietly repeating itself. This pattern of despair reached its bloody climax with the next king, Louis XVI, and his queen, the infamous Marie Antoinette. Their reign was defined by political crisis and revolutionary fervor, a storm of their own making fueled by financial ruin and profound social inequality. They both ultimately met their end at the guillotine, their executions a brutal full stop to the French monarchy. The official historical record is clear: their downfall was a consequence of human decisions, not a supernatural hex. But the curse narrative provides a chillingly simple alternative. It weaves the diamond directly into their tragic story, suggesting that the stone itself guided their fate. According to the legend, a desperate Marie Antoinette supposedly ordered the French blue to be smuggled out of France during the Revolution, an act that only sealed her doomed destiny. Whether this happened or not is almost irrelevant to the power of the tale. The curse offers a tangible villain, a glittering scapegoat for a complex historical catastrophe. It is far easier to blame a bewitched gem than to untangle the intricate web of political failure, economic collapse, and social injustice that truly cost them their heads. So, what became of the diamond after the monarchy fell? The revolutionary chaos that consumed the crown jewels would provide the perfect environment for the curse to evolve and find its next chapter. The French blue did not simply vanish amidst the revolution's chaos. It was stolen in a heist of breathtaking audacity. For the diamond to truly become a cursed object, it first had to disappear, and its theft from the Garde Meuble, the royal storehouse, in September of 1792, was an event so perfectly timed it feels like fate. The monarchy had been suspended, and the new revolutionary government was in disarray. The crown jewels, symbols of the hated old regime, were stored in a building that was now guarded by just a handful of men, its security an afterthought in a city consumed by panic and bloodshed. A group of thieves, likely an organized gang who understood the immense opportunity before them, did not strike once. They returned to the treasury night after night, methodically looting its treasures over the course of nearly a week. They knew exactly what they were looking for, systematically emptying cases of diamonds, pearls, and other priceless gems. Among their most prized acquisitions was the French blue, the ultimate symbol of royal excess. It was lifted from its setting and taken, disappearing into the criminal underworld of Paris. From that moment on, the official record for the great blue diamond goes completely blank. It was as if the stone had been swallowed by the earth, its trail gone cold for decades. This mysterious void is the very heart of the curse's power. A gem associated with so much royal death and national trauma simply vanishes, only to resurface years later, seemingly bringing a fresh wave of misfortune with it. The theft provides the perfect narrative bridge, a dark period of silence that allows the legend to grow and fester, waiting for the moment the diamond would re-emerge, forever changed and ready for its next act. The great blue diamond vanished for a generation, its legend fading into the whispers of a fallen regime. Then, 2 decades after it was stolen from the French treasury, a ghost from the past reappeared. In London around the year 1812, a diamond merchant named Daniel Eliasson made a record of his possession. He listed a large blue diamond, a stone of exceptional quality and color. This was not the 67-carat French blue of royal portraits. This was a smaller, though still magnificent, gem weighing 45.52 carats, its shape now the elegant antique cushion cut we recognize today. How could this London stone be the same one stolen from Paris? The evidence is compelling and rests on a perfect physical match. A lead cast had been made of the original French blue, a 3-dimensional model used by the royal jewelers. When this centuries-old cast is placed over the Hope diamond, the contours align with stunning precision. The new stone fits perfectly within the silhouette of the old, as if the larger gem was carefully sculpted down, its identity deliberately erased. This was not a different diamond, it was the French blue reborn. The recutting was a brilliant criminal act of disguise. By reshaping the most famous stolen gem in Europe, the thieves or their accomplices could now sell it on the open market without immediate recognition. They had melted down a legend to create a new, sellable masterpiece, sacrificing over 20 carats of weight to conceal a world of history. This moment, the diamond's re-emergence into the documented world, marks the true beginning of its modern life and the name it would forever carry. But who would be brave enough or foolish enough to become its next owner now that its cursed past was hidden just beneath a freshly polished surface? The diamond finally had a stable home and a name that would echo through history. Its new owner was Henry Philip Hope, a member of a fabulously wealthy Anglo-Dutch banking family. Hope was not just a rich man, he was a passionate and discerning connoisseur, a collector on a grand scale. He assembled one of the most celebrated private gem collections in all of Europe, a treasure trove of precious stones that was the envy of his peers. And at the very heart of this collection, its undisputed crown jewel was the blue diamond. For the first time since its recutting, the gem was not hidden or disguised. It was proudly catalogued and displayed, a central piece of a gentleman's legacy. In an inventory of Hope's possessions drawn up after his death in 1839, the stone is clearly listed, its 45.52 carats described in meticulous detail. This moment should have been a peaceful conclusion, the diamond settling into a legacy of admiration and scholarship, but peace was not part of its story. Henry Philip Hope died without a clear will, leaving no instructions for which of his 3 nephews should inherit his vast fortune and his legendary collection. The result was a legal firestorm. The Hope inheritance case became a notorious and bitterly protracted lawsuit, dragging through the English courts for years. The family was torn apart by greed and litigation, a public spectacle of familial discord centered on an estate that held the blue diamond as its most valuable asset. For those who believe in the curse, this bitter feud is not just a messy legal dispute. It is clear evidence. They see the diamond's malign influence twisting a straightforward inheritance into a decade-long battle that soured family bonds and drained fortunes in legal fees. Here was the curse at work again, not with blood and revolution, but with writs and probate, demonstrating a new, modern kind of ruin. The stone had found a permanent name, Hope, yet it seemed to bring anything but hope to the family that now bore its title. So what happened to the diamond once the courts finally decided its fate? Its journey was far from over, and its next owners would face tribulations far more personal and tragic. The diamond's legacy of discord did not end with the inheritance lawsuit. After the court battles, the blue stone passed to Henry Philip Hope's nephew, Henry Thomas Hope. Under his care, the gem seemed to rest peacefully, a celebrated centerpiece of a stable and respected collection. But this quiet period was merely the calm before a far more dramatic storm. When Henry Thomas died, the diamond descended to his grandson, Lord Francis Hope, a man whose life would become a textbook case of the cursed narrative in action. Lord Francis inherited not just a gem, but a title and a fortune, yet he seemed destined to lose it all. His was a story of relentless financial pressure, scandal, and a very public, very messy divorce, a perfect recipe for the legend to thrive. Lord Francis Hope's troubles were rooted in a simple, crushing problem: debt. He had inherited an extravagant lifestyle but lacked the financial discipline to sustain it. To maintain his position in high society, he spent lavishly, and soon his immense wealth was overshadowed by even more immense debts. His creditors circled and the pressure mounted. The most obvious solution, the one asset that could clear his obligations, was the diamond that bore his family name. But selling a family heirloom of such renown was a social scandal in itself, a public admission of financial ruin. He spent years petitioning the courts for permission to break the entail, a legal restriction that prevented him from selling the core of his inheritance. This very public struggle to sell his most prized possession was a humiliation that played out in newspapers and drawing rooms, firmly linking the family's decline to the fate of the blue gem. His personal life provided even more fuel for the curse's fire. Lord Francis married an American actress named May Yo, a woman whose vibrant and unconventional personality captivated London society. Their marriage was a whirlwind of glamour and gossip, but it quickly soured into acrimony. Stories of infidelity, reckless spending, and bitter arguments became public knowledge. The divorce was a spectacular scandal, further draining Lord Francis' finances and his reputation. It was May Yo, after their separation, who would become one of the curse's most powerful and vocal proponents. She told and sold sensational stories to the press, claiming the diamond had brought nothing but misery to everyone who owned it, and she pointed to her own failed marriage as definitive proof. Her public pronouncements transformed the old whispers into a modern media sensation, giving the curse a compelling, human face and a voice that reached millions. This series of events, the desperate financial ruin, the scandalous divorce, and the ex-wife's public testimony, solidified the diamond's dark reputation in the public mind. The Hope family's troubles were no longer just a private tragedy or a series of poor decisions. They were now chapters in a larger, more terrifying story. The curse was no longer about beheadings and revolutions. It had evolved. It now manifested as bankruptcy and broken homes, the kind of modern misery every person could understand and fear. The stone had a name, Hope, and a documented history of destroying the very family that gave it that name. So where could such a notorious object possibly go next? Its path was about to lead it across the Atlantic, into the hands of new owners who were seemingly immune to old-world superstitions, and into an era where its legend would be forged into an undeniable modern myth. The diamond's journey from a symbol of aristocratic decay to a modern American legend began with a simple transaction. Finally freed from the legal entanglements of the Hope family, the blue gem was sold in 1900 and won by the desperate Lord Francis to a New York City jeweler named Simon Frankel. For the first time in its long history, the stone crossed the Atlantic Ocean, leaving behind the old world and its aristocratic scandals for a new world of burgeoning industry and media savvy. Its price was a reported $148,000, a fortune at the time, yet it was a fraction of what it might have fetched without the dark cloud of its reputation. Frankel, a businessman, saw past the whispers of misfortune and recognized a unique investment, but the diamond did not find a permanent home with him. It began a rapid and puzzling journey through the hands of various jewelers, a period of restless movement that only added to its mysterious aura. It was owned briefly by a Syrian broker, then by a Parisian gem dealer, as if no one could hold onto it for long. This strange odyssey culminated in 1909, when one of the most famous names in the world of jewelry took possession, a man who understood that a story could be more valuable than the gem itself. That man was Pierre Cartier. Pierre Cartier was more than a jeweler, he was a master of perception. He recognized that in 20th century America, wealth was not just about possession, it was about drama and distinction. The blue diamond was magnificent, but its true potential was locked in the tragic tales of the French court and the ruined Hope family. Cartier decided to weaponize these stories. He did not see a curse, he saw a marketing opportunity of unparalleled power. He meticulously researched and polished the diamond's dark history, weaving together the threads of Tavernier's alleged theft, the beheadings of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, and the financial collapse of Lord Francis Hope into a single, seamless narrative of doom. He crafted a compelling sales pitch where the diamond was not just an object of beauty, but a character in a Gothic thriller. His goal was not to scare away buyers, but to attract a specific kind of client, one who was daring, modern, and captivated by the allure of danger. He knew that for a certain elite, owning a gem that had toppled kings would be the ultimate symbol of their own power and immunity. The curse was no longer a whispered secret, it was now a central feature, a brand. But could even Pierre Cartier have predicted the perfect customer who would step forward? A woman whose life would become the next and perhaps most famous chapter in the diamond's cursed tale. Pierre Cartier understood that a story could be sold just as easily as a stone. When he acquired the Hope diamond in 1909, he saw past its 45 carats of flawless blue brilliance. He saw a narrative, a dark and thrilling biography that could captivate a new generation of American millionaires. Cartier was not just a jeweler, he was a storyteller for the elite, and he recognized that in an era of burgeoning wealth, the ultimate luxury was not mere ownership but the possession of a legend. He meticulously compiled what can only be called a dossier of doom, a curated history linking the diamond to every tragedy that had ever touched it. He wove together the alleged theft from a Hindu idol, the beheadings of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, and the financial ruin of the Hope family into a single, seamless tale of inevitable misfortune. This was not a random collection of old rumors, it was a strategic narrative carefully polished to maximize its dramatic impact. He was not trying to scare away buyers. He was targeting a very specific kind of client, one who would be enthralled by the danger, who would see owning a cursed object as the ultimate testament to their own power and modernity. For the right person, surviving the curse would be the ultimate status symbol. Cartier's genius was in understanding that the value of an object is not just in its substance, but in the myth that surrounds it. He was not selling a diamond, he was selling a leading role in a Gothic tragedy, and he soon found the perfect actress for his play, a woman whose life would become the next and most famous act in the diamond's long-running story. Evalyn Walsh McLean was precisely the kind of client Pierre Cartier had dreamed of. She was an American heiress of staggering wealth, married to the owner of a newspaper empire, and she lived her life with a flamboyant, almost reckless disregard for convention. When Cartier arrived in Washington, D.C. to show her the diamond, he knew better than to simply present a jewel. He staged an experience. He did not hide the curse, he dramatized it, laying out the entire tragic history he had so carefully compiled. Evalyn was a superstitious woman, and she was initially hesitant, but Cartier's brilliant presentation did not push her away. It seduced her. He told her that while the stone brought misfortune to others, its power could be reversed for a wearer who was bold enough to master it. For a woman like Evalyn, who believed herself charmed and immune to life's ordinary troubles, this was an irresistible challenge. She did not just buy a diamond, she accepted a dare against fate itself. In 1911, she purchased the Hope diamond, having it set as the centerpiece of a magnificent necklace she would wear to countless parties, a tangible declaration of her own invincibility. For a time, it seemed she had won her wager with destiny. Her life was a whirlwind of extravagant parties and sensational headlines, the diamond always glittering at her throat. She was famously photographed with her dog wearing the gem, a public display of her nonchalance toward the curse. But then, the tragedies began to accumulate with a brutal, relentless pace. Her 9-year-old son, Vincent, the heir to her fortune, was killed in a car accident. Her beloved daughter, just 25 years old, died from a suicide after a troubled marriage. Her husband, Ned McLean, spiraled into a very public life of alcoholism, infidelity, and mental instability, eventually being committed to a psychiatric institution. The vast fortune that had once seemed endless evaporated through a combination of the Great Depression, her husband's mismanagement, and her own continued lavish spending. Evalyn herself battled depression and ill health, watching the world she had built crumble around her while the blue diamond remained, a constant, glittering witness to her despair. To the public and the press, Evalyn Walsh McLean's life was not just a series of personal tragedies. It was a perfect, horrifying case study. Her story had everything the curse narrative needed. A vibrant, famous heiress brought low by a cascade of misery that touched every aspect of her existence, from the loss of her children to the collapse of her marriage and her fortune. She had flaunted the diamond, and in the eyes of the world, the diamond had taken its revenge. Her life became the ultimate proof, the modern evidence that sealed the Hope diamond's deadly reputation for generations. It was no longer an old European superstition. It was a fact documented in American newspapers. When Evalyn died in 1947, her jewels had to be sold to settle her enormous debts, and the most infamous gem of all was once again looking for a new home. But who would possibly take it now after such a devastatingly public demonstration of its power? Evalyn McLean wore her defiance like a crown. She draped the Hope diamond around the neck of her dog for a publicity photograph, a gesture of supreme confidence aimed directly at the legends whispering around her. She called the diamond her lucky charm, a bold declaration to the world that she, a modern American heiress, was immune to its ancient curses. Yet life, with a cruel sense of irony, seemed determined to prove her wrong. The glittering world she built began to crack with a tragedy so profound it would haunt any parent. Her young son, Vincent, just 9 years old, darted into the street and was struck by a car, dying almost instantly. The loss was a devastating blow, a private agony that the public immediately linked to the blue stone she so publicly flaunted. Newspapers did not simply report the accident, they framed it as the curse's latest victim. The headlines screamed of the Hope diamond's deadly legacy, weaving a child's death into the gem's dark tapestry. This was not just a family tragedy anymore, it was a public spectacle, a chapter in a story everyone thought they already knew. Then came the collapse of her husband, Ned McLean. His descent into alcoholism and mental instability played out in sensational newspaper stories, his eventual commitment to a psychiatric hospital providing more grim fodder for the curse narrative. The family fortune, once seemingly limitless, evaporated through his mismanagement and the economic pressures of the Great Depression. But the final, crushing blow was the death of her daughter. At just 25 years old, Evalyn's beloved daughter took her own life after a deeply unhappy marriage. This succession of losses, a son, a daughter, a husband, and a fortune, was too perfectly tragic to be mere coincidence in the public imagination. The media became obsessed, reporting every twist of her downfall with a morbid fascination, always ensuring the Hope diamond was mentioned in the lead. Evalyn herself lived in a painful contradiction. She never publicly blamed the diamond, clinging to her defiant narrative until the end. Yet in her private moments, she was a woman besieged by grief, her life a stark monument to the very misfortune she claimed to have mastered. When she died in 1947, her story had cemented the curse in 20th century American culture. It was no longer a dusty European superstition. It was a modern American cautionary tale, documented in headlines and witnessed by millions. Her life provided the perfect, heartbreaking evidence. The curse had evolved from beheading kings to breaking a mother's heart, a kind of sorrow anyone could understand and fear. The question was no longer if the diamond was cursed, but who would be brave or foolish enough to challenge its power next. After Evalyn McLean's death, her legendary jewelry collection was dismantled to settle the vast debts she left behind. The most anticipated item, the Hope diamond, was purchased in 1949 by a man who represented a new era for such treasures, the famed New York jeweler Harry Winston. Winston was a master of his craft, a visionary who understood gems not as private trophies but as pieces of a larger human and geological story. For nearly a decade, the diamond resided securely within his renowned collection, a period notably free of the personal tragedies that had defined its past. There were no untimely deaths, no financial collapses, no public scandals. Harry Winston's stable and successful ownership presented a powerful challenge to the curse narrative. It seemed that Diamond's malign influence had finally been broken, or perhaps it had never existed at all outside the realm of compelling stories and human misfortune. But Winston had a far grander vision for the stone's future than merely keeping it safe. He believed its true value was not in private ownership, but in its ability to inspire and educate the public. In a move that stunned the world, he decided to donate the Hope Diamond to the Smithsonian Institution's National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. This was not a loan or a temporary exhibit. It was an unconditional gift, a permanent home. The most famous cursed object in the world was to become a national treasure. The method of its delivery was perhaps the most astonishing part of the entire affair. In November of 1958, Harry Winston's staff did not hire a fleet of armored trucks or a team of security guards. Instead, they packaged the 45-carat diamond in a plain brown paper wrapper, insured it for $1 million, and sent it on its journey from New York to Washington, D.C. through the United States Postal Service as ordinary registered mail. Imagine a postal worker casually handling a package containing one of the most infamous gems in history, completely unaware of its contents. This simple, almost mundane act was a powerful symbolic gesture. It stripped the diamond of its aura of danger and superstition, treating it not as an object of fear, but as what it truly was, a remarkable piece of the natural world worthy of study and admiration. This single act of donation transformed the Hope Diamond forever. It was liberated from the private collections of kings and heiresses and placed into the public trust. It ceased to be a passive carrier of a dark legend and became an active subject of scientific inquiry and historical investigation. The curse, which had thrived in the shadows of private ownership and whispered secrets, was now exposed to the bright, unforgiving light of public scrutiny. What could scientists and historians discover when they were finally allowed to examine the stone without the filter of its terrifying stories? The Hope Diamond's arrival at the Smithsonian Institution was a quiet revolution. After centuries of private turmoil, the gem was now public property, and its new caretakers prepared a home worthy of its complex legacy. It was placed within the Harry Winston Gallery in a case of bulletproof glass, suspended on a rotating pedestal so visitors could admire its deep blue color from every angle. A custom-designed necklace of 16 white diamonds and 45 smaller stones framed it, transforming the gem from a solitary object of superstition into the centerpiece of a modern, dazzling display. Yet for all this careful presentation, a palpable public anxiety lingered in the air. What if the curse did not recognize the transfer of ownership? Could a curse that toppled kings and broke an heiress now afflict an entire museum, or even the nation's capital itself? This was the unspoken question on many minds as the diamond went on display for the first time. Some visitors half expected exhibits to malfunction or the building itself to suffer some strange calamity, but the years passed and no disaster struck the Smithsonian. The only thing that grew was the diamond's fame. It quickly became the museum's single most popular attraction, drawing millions of visitors who stood in long lines just for a brief, personal encounter with its legendary glow. This was the curse's final and perhaps most important transformation. Stripped of its private owners, the diamond could no longer be linked to individual tragedies. Its power to harm was neutralized by the collective gaze of the public. The stone was no longer a passive carrier of doom, but an active catalyst for curiosity. For the first time in its long history, scientists and historians could finally approach the Hope Diamond not as a cursed artifact, but as a remarkable piece of the natural world with a story waiting to be untangled through evidence, not fear. But what happens when we apply the tools of history and science to this legend? The evidence tells a very different story, one that unravels the curse thread by thread. Let us begin at the very beginning with Jean-Baptiste Tavernier. The gruesome tale of him being torn apart by wild dogs for his sacrilege is a complete fabrication. Historical records confirm he sold the diamond to King Louis XIV, was granted a title of nobility, and died peacefully in Russia at the age of 84 from a simple fever. His long and prosperous life is utterly incompatible with the idea of an immediate, vengeful curse. Next, we must confront the diamond's connection to the French monarchy. The downfall of Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette was not orchestrated by a supernatural gem. It was the direct result of the French Revolution, a complex and explosive event driven by immense social inequality, a bankrupt treasury, and rising democratic ideals. To blame a diamond for this seismic political shift is to ignore the real human decisions and systemic failures that shaped history. The stone was merely a passive symbol of the excess that revolutionaries sought to destroy. Even the troubles of the Hope family, so often cited as proof, lose their supernatural sheen under scrutiny. The financial decline of aristocratic families in the 19th century was a common phenomenon. Vast estates were expensive to maintain, and agricultural incomes were falling. Lord Francis Hope's specific predicament, his crippling debt, and the legal battle over his inheritance was a story repeated in many great houses of England. His poor financial management and a scandalous divorce were human failures, not the inevitable result of a cursed heirloom. This brings us to the most crucial logical flaw in the entire legend, a principle every scientist and historian understands. Correlation does not equal causation. Just because two events happen in sequence does not mean one caused the other. A king owns a diamond and is later beheaded. A family owns a diamond and later faces financial ruin. These are correlations. The actual causes, the political revolutions, and the economic pressures are far more complex and far less glamorous than a simple curse. We are pattern-seeking creatures, and we find it deeply satisfying to connect dots, even when no real line exists between them. The curse provides a neat, emotionally resonant explanation for life's random and painful events. It is far easier to blame a blue stone for a child's tragic accident than to accept the brutal, chaotic randomness of fate. So if the curse is not real, what power does it truly hold over us? The enduring power of the Hope Diamond's curse lies not in the stone, but in the fascinating wiring of the human mind. We are natural storytellers, and our brains are hardwired to seek patterns and create narratives from the chaos of life. This tendency leads us directly to a powerful psychological trap known as confirmation bias. We actively look for and remember evidence that supports our existing beliefs, while unconsciously ignoring or dismissing anything that contradicts them. When we think of the Hope Diamond, we vividly recall the bloody French Revolution or Evalyn McLean's profound tragedies. What we forget are the long, stable, and entirely uneventful periods. Jean-Baptiste Tavernier lived a long and prosperous life. Henry Thomas Hope enjoyed the gem for decades without incident. Harry Winston owned it safely for years and donated it without a hint of personal misfortune. Our minds filter out these quiet facts because they do not fit the thrilling story we want to believe. The curse feels real because we have selectively curated its history, remembering only the dramatic lows and forgetting the peaceful, ordinary years. This selective memory feeds directly into another cognitive shortcut, the narrative fallacy. Our brains find it deeply unsatisfying to accept that terrible events are often random, unconnected accidents of fate. We crave a plot, a villain, a reason. A king is beheaded, a family goes bankrupt, a child dies in an accident. To accept these as separate, tragic coincidences is unsettling. It makes the world feel frighteningly arbitrary, but if we can connect them all with a single, glittering thread, the curse, then suddenly everything makes a terrible, satisfying sense. The narrative fallacy transforms a series of unrelated misfortunes across 3 centuries into a single, compelling story with a clear beginning, middle, and end. We are not just witnessing random events, we are following a plot. This innate desire for a coherent story is what makes the legend of the curse so emotionally resonant and stubbornly persistent, even in the face of contradictory evidence. And this is precisely where a third powerful force enters the picture, one that expertly molds and markets these psychological vulnerabilities. From the moment the diamond left the Hope family, media sensationalism seized upon its story and never let go. In the 19th century, so-called penny dreadfuls and sensationalist newspapers fed the public exaggerated tales of the gem's deadly legacy. But it was in the 20th century that the curse truly became a modern myth, thanks to figures like Pierre Cartier, who packaged the legend for sale, and most importantly, the voracious American press. The tragedies of Evalyn Walsh McLean were not just reported, they were framed. Every headline, every article meticulously linked her personal suffering back to the blue diamond around her neck. The media did not simply report on a car accident or a bankruptcy, they reported on the curse claiming another victim. This created a powerful feedback loop where the public's belief, fueled by our psychological biases, was constantly reinforced and amplified by a profit-driven media ecosystem that knew a good story sold papers. The curse became a brand, a recognizable and marketable tale of Gothic horror in a modern setting. So the next time you feel a chill looking at its deep blue glow, ask yourself, are you sensing a supernatural force, or are you simply feeling the immense power of a story, perfectly tailored over centuries to captivate, terrify, and ultimately convince you? So we are left with a powerful psychological question. Can the simple belief in a curse become a self-fulfilling prophecy? The answer lies in a fascinating phenomenon known as the nocebo effect, the placebo effect's dark twin. While a placebo can make you feel better through belief alone, a nocebo can make you feel worse or even manifest real physical symptoms purely through the power of negative expectation. If you are convinced something will harm you, your own mind can help make that fear a reality. Now, apply this principle to a cursed diamond. An owner who truly believes in the legend lives under a constant low hum of anxiety. This state of mind can subtly and profoundly influence their entire world. They might become more risk-averse or paradoxically more reckless as if challenging fate. They start scanning their life for any sign of trouble, and when misfortune inevitably strikes, as it does in every life, their mind instantly connects it to the gem. The diamond becomes a convenient, all-purpose scapegoat for life's inherent randomness and pain. Consider Evalyn Walsh McLean once more. She purchased the diamond with full knowledge of its grim backstory, a tale Pierre Cartier had expertly sold to her. She wore it as a badge of defiance, but that very act proves she was constantly thinking about the curse, defining her relationship with the stone through opposition to its legend. This psychological framework would have colored her perception of every subsequent event. When her son died in a tragic accident, a heartbreaking event with a clear, mundane cause, the pre-existing narrative of the curse provided a ready-made, and in a strange way, a more emotionally manageable explanation. It is less chaotic to believe a diamond caused a tragedy than to accept that a child can be lost to a random moment of bad luck. Her financial collapse was not a sudden supernatural event. It was the slow result of the Great Depression and her husband's documented mismanagement. Yet, because she owned the infamous Hope diamond, these separate, explainable tragedies were woven together into a single, cursed tapestry. The belief did not cause the car accident or the stock market crash, but it absolutely shaped how she and the entire world interpreted those events. The stone itself was inert, but the story attached to it was powerfully, dangerously active. This leads us to a final, chilling possibility. If the curse is not in the gem, but in the mind of the beholder, then its true power is limitless, waiting only for a believer to give it form. Even without the diamond physically present, its legend has a way of attaching itself to history's greatest disasters. One of the most persistent modern myths links the Hope diamond to the sinking of the RMS Titanic. The story goes that the ill-fated ship was carrying the cursed gem and that its presence doomed the voyage. This is quite simply a complete fabrication. The Hope Diamond was safe in a bank vault in New York at the time, owned by Evalyn and Ned McLean. Yet a novel published just a year after the disaster, and later a popular 1958 film, prominently featured a large, cursed blue diamond sinking with the ship. The fictional narrative was so compelling that it bled into public memory, forever linking these two 20th-century legends in a perfect storm of tragic coincidence. It felt right, so people believed it. The McLean family itself seems to be a magnet for this kind of grim association. Beyond their personal heartbreaks, Ned McLean's newspaper, The Washington Post, was the very one that published the sensational, unverified telegram claiming the Titanic had sunk. The McLeans were not just victims of their own tragedies, they were strangely adjacent to a national one. Their name appearing in the headlines of the disaster they were falsely accused of causing with their diamond. This web of connection feels too intricate to be random, feeding the curse's narrative with a seemingly endless supply of eerie links. Even in its peaceful home at the Smithsonian, the diamond has not been immune to these strange whispers. During one routine exhibit change, a temporary power outage plunged the gallery into darkness. It was a minor electrical fault, the kind that happens in large buildings every single day. Yet, staff and visitors could not help but exchange knowing glances and make nervous jokes. Was it just a coincidence, or was the curse making its presence known? A fallen display case seal on another occasion prompted the same hushed speculation. These minor events are meaningless in a practical sense, but they are profoundly meaningful for the legend. They are the modern equivalent of a ghostly chill in a haunted house, small, explainable occurrences that we choose to interpret through the lens of the story we want to believe. They keep the curse alive not through grand tragedy, but through these small, shared moments of suspicion, a collective wink that says maybe, just maybe, the story is not over yet. Perhaps the most human face ever attached to the curse was not a king or an heiress, but a simple United States postal worker. When Harry Winston made his historic donation, the package containing the Hope Diamond was placed into the hands of the ordinary mail system, and its journey ended with a man named James Todd. As the story goes, Todd was the postman who personally delivered the plain brown wrapper to the Smithsonian in 1958. And according to the ever-evolving curse law, his life immediately descended into a perfect storm of small-town tragedy. The legend claims his wife died shortly after the delivery, his family dog was accidentally strangled by its own leash, and Todd himself suffered a severe leg injury in a car accident. This narrative is heartbreakingly relatable, transforming the curse from an aristocratic drama into a story of blue-collar misfortune, as if the diamond's malice could reach anyone, even the innocent man who merely carried it. But when we investigate James Todd's actual life, the facts tell a very different and far more ordinary story. It is true that James Todd delivered the diamond. It is also true that his wife, Margie, passed away, but she did not die shortly after the delivery. She died 16 years later in 1974 after a long battle with illness. The tragic death of the family dog and the car accident are events that are difficult to independently verify, and even if they did occur, they were separated by years from his brief encounter with the gem. Most importantly, James Todd himself repeatedly and publicly denied that the diamond had brought him any bad luck. He lived a long life, passing away in 1999 at the age of 87, having outlived his wife by a quarter of a century. The story of the cursed postman is a masterclass in how legends are fabricated. A few kernels of truth, the man, the delivery, his wife's eventual death, are stripped of their context and chronology, then woven together with unverified anecdotes to create a new, emotionally potent chapter. The curse does not need facts, it only needs a name and a semblance of tragedy. James Todd became a convenient character in a story everyone already knew by heart, his real life completely rewritten to fit a predetermined plot. His experience proves that the curse's most potent power is not to cause disaster, but to retrospectively claim it, attaching itself to the natural sorrows of any human life and calling them its own design. Science has finally given the Hope Diamond its true voice. Since its arrival at the Smithsonian, the gem has been subjected to a level of scrutiny its previous owners could never have imagined. It was carefully removed from its famous necklace setting and placed under the gaze of advanced spectrometers and high-powered microscopes. Researchers were not looking for a curse, they were searching for a fingerprint, the unique chemical and physical signature that could unlock the stone's deepest secrets. The first clue was its famous red glow. Under controlled ultraviolet light, scientists confirmed the diamond's intense phosphorescence, measuring precisely how long that fiery red light persisted after the UV lamp was switched off. This phenomenon, they determined, is directly caused by the very same boron atoms that give the stone its blue color. The boron acts as an impurity in the diamond's perfect carbon lattice, trapping energy from the UV light and then slowly releasing it as that eerie, visible red glow. This characteristic is exceptionally rare, a unique identifier that sets the Hope Diamond apart from almost every other gem in the world. It is a scientific signature written in light. The next step was to find a match. Historians and gemologists turned to the few surviving artifacts from the French royal collection. They examined a lead cast, a three-dimensional model made of the original French blue. When this centuries-old silhouette was placed over the Hope Diamond, the fit was not just close, it was perfect. The contours of the Hope Diamond aligned exactly with the negative space left by the larger French blue, proving beyond any reasonable doubt that the Hope was a direct descendant, meticulously cut down from the stolen French crown jewel. This physical evidence created an unbroken chain of custody, linking the gem in Washington, D.C. directly to the court of Louis XIV. The scientific investigation revealed a story more incredible than any legend, a narrative of planetary forces, criminal ingenuity, and human history written not in whispers but in boron and light. The legend of the Hope Diamond did not remain confined to history books or museum halls. It escaped into the wilds of popular culture, becoming a permanent fixture in our collective imagination. Its story of beauty and doom proved to be the perfect raw material for filmmakers, writers, and musicians. One of its earliest cinematic appearances was in a series of silent film serials titled The Hope Diamond Mystery, which began in 1921. These cliffhanger-driven adventures spun wild tales around the gem, cementing its reputation as an object of peril and intrigue for a mass audience. Decades later, its influence was felt in one of the most successful films of all time. While the Hope Diamond itself was safely in a vault during the Titanic's voyage, its archetype, the large, cursed blue gem, directly inspired the fictional heart of the ocean in James Cameron's epic. The movie brilliantly transplanted the Hope's core legend onto a new fictional stone, proving the enduring power of its narrative. It is a story so compelling we are willing to rewrite history just to include it. The diamond's allure has also inspired countless novels, from Gothic romances to modern thrillers, where it often serves as a catalyst for adventure, mystery, and tragedy. Songwriters, too, have been drawn to its contradictory nature, penning lyrics that explore themes of doomed love and beautiful temptation. This cultural journey reveals something profound. The Hope Diamond has transcended its own history to become a universal symbol, a shorthand for any beautiful but dangerous desire. It represents the thing we desperately want, even when we know it might destroy us. This is why the legend continues to capture the creative spirit. It is not about a curse locked in a stone, but a story about our own deepest fears and fascinations endlessly retold. That deep blue glow holds more than just trapped light. It holds a story perfectly engineered to captivate the human mind. The curse of the Hope Diamond endures because it is not merely a superstition. It is a masterfully crafted narrative combining all the essential ingredients of a timeless Gothic tale. It begins with immense, almost hypnotic beauty, a gem so perfect it seems otherworldly. This beauty is immediately paired with incredible wealth and the glamour of royalty, placing the object in a world of power and privilege we can only imagine. Then the plot twists into royal scandal and violent revolution, complete with beheadings and a dramatic theft. Finally, it descends into intimate, personal tragedy, the kind of heartbreak that resonates with anyone who has ever loved and lost. It is a ready-made epic, a story we would eagerly consume in a novel or a film. And in our modern, rational world, this legend taps into a deep-seated, almost primal, attraction to the possibility of the supernatural. We are drawn to the idea that there is more to the world than what we can measure and explain. The curse offers a thrilling escape from the mundane, a chance to believe in a universe where objects have destinies and fates are written in stone. More importantly, it provides a desperately simple explanation for events that are otherwise too complex or too painful to comprehend. The chaotic, bloody collapse of the French monarchy was the result of decades of social, economic, and political failure. The tragic death of a child is a random, senseless accident that shatters a family. These truths are difficult, messy, and emotionally exhausting. How much easier it is to point to a single, glittering cause. The curse neatly ties a blue ribbon around the chaos of history and the cruelty of chance, transforming random suffering into a purposeful, if terrifying, plot. The mundane reality of cause and effect can never compete with a story this powerful, so the legend lives on not because it is true, but because on some fundamental level we need it to be. After centuries of whispers, our investigation reaches a verdict grounded not in superstition, but in evidence. The true story of the Hope Diamond is a breathtaking tapestry woven from the violent geology of our planet, the daring of global merchants, the staggering opulence of kings, the fiery chaos of revolution, and the brilliant marketing of the modern age. Each of these threads is a documented fact, creating a narrative far richer than any simple curse. The legend of misfortune, while irresistibly compelling, crumbles under historical scrutiny, revealing itself as a powerful cocktail of coincidence, psychological bias, and media sensationalism. We connected the dots because our minds are wired to find patterns, and we crafted a story because we crave meaning in life's random tragedies. The diamond was merely a glittering prop in a human drama we wrote for ourselves. So where does the real magic of this stone lie? It is not in a fictional hex, but in its enduring, physical splendor and its silent witness to centuries of human ambition, folly, and creativity. Its deep blue color, born from a billion-year journey and a dash of cosmic boron, has outlasted empires. It has passed from the hands of a sun king to a revolutionary thief, from a bankrupt lord to a defiant heiress, and finally into the public trust where it now inspires millions. That is its true power, the ability to reflect our own stories back at us. So what do you think? Is the curse real, or is the true story, a saga of science and humanity, even more fascinating? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more historical investigations.